doesn't love a good mystery? The planet is dotted with places that are surreal, eerie, and sometimes downright bizarre. From examples like Area 51, the Moai statues of Easter Island, to the ruins of Machu Picchu, each of the locations from this talk have their own wacky stories. Debates have spawned centuries long in search of the truth, in search of what they really are. While many of these mysteries have logical explanations, others remain stubbornly unsolved. We look at the science, stories, theories, and tales surrounding some of the world's strangest sites. Without further ado, our first speaker.
How many times have you hoped that a certain annoying teacher of yours just burnt in hell? And what if I told you we actually had an example of a gateway to the fiery hell we all imagine? At the heart of Turkmenistan's Karakum Desert sits a crater of fire the size of a football field that's been burning now for almost 50 years. Locals have suitably dubbed it the door to hell. Officially, it's known as the Darwasa Gas Crater. Now, it isn't exactly a natural phenomenon. Nature merely provided the raw materials for what humans have managed to turn into a decades long environmental freak show. Gas prospecting gone wrong is the apparent explanation here. The Karakum Desert was rich in oil fields and natural gas. In 1971, Soviet engineers got excited about the estimates of natural gas. They bit off more than they could chew when they drilled and hit a gigantic underground gas cavern, which then proceeded to collapse. It formed an enormous sinkhole that was 70 meters in diameter, 30 meters in depth, and even sucked the entire drilling rig into it. A classic oopsie. Hasn't been any official reports over the events that followed. Most believe that during initial exploration of the area, the geologists noticed that the crater began emitting a bunch of greenhouse gases, including large amounts of methane, which left the Soviet scientists with a choice to make. Continue to let the dangerous methane leak into the atmosphere, putting the local population and environment at risk, or light the crater on fire, burn off all the gas, which the scientists predicted would only take a few weeks. They chose the latter and set fire to the crater. Well, joke's on them. Their calculations were way off, and 49 years later, the crater is still burning. Now you're probably wondering why the Soviet scientists choose to burn the crater in the first place. Here's why. In some oil and gas drilling operations, where natural gas is released, if it can't be captured, it's just burnt off in a process called flaring. Yes, this does release tons of carbon monoxide, but it's way less harmful than methane, which is a greenhouse gas 20 times more potent than carbon monoxide. Soviets tried to sweep their mess under the rug by allegedly concealing the extent of their not so little mishap, by leaving no paper trail, not even an incident report. Conveniently enough for them, there is no remnant of the drilling rig, except a small piece of it, which sits on the outside rim of the crater, which tourists now use to sit on. Even though the exact reason of the burning is unknown, Door to Hell has now become something of a tourist attraction, since it's a heaven for pyromaniacs. What adds to the mystery of the endless burning of the crater is that it releases a terrible eggy smell, which has weirdly nothing to do with the natural gas. As for why steps haven't been taken to either harness the energy of the crater or just extinguish it entirely, say you do extinguish it, the gas wouldn't stop. You just have to find a way to cap every fissure within proximity of the site. Now that is both expensive and inefficient. Turkmenistan is a country having the fourth largest natural gas reserve. So they don't care, because an investment here would be a high risk and a low reward prospect. Convenient for them anyway, since from 1993 to 2017, the government provided electricity, water, and gas free of charge to all residents. The Darwasa crater has been dubbed the door to hell by locals, not just because it looks like a gateway to hell, but also because it has led lots of animals to their death. Being the only light and heat source at night, animals are naturally attracted to the crater. Legend is that camel spiders, seduced by its warmth, tend to approach the crater and plummet to their deaths, giving you a kind of spider apocalypse movie vibe. Weirdly enough, there isn't a restrictive fencing at the crater, so tourists are free to get up close and personal. If you fall in, it's an obviously painful slow death by asphyxiation, with your cries for help not being heard for miles. Surprisingly enough, only one local has actually died that way. Huh. Think about all those stories of people burning in the fiery pits of hell for their sins. Fun stuff. In 2010, the Turkmenistan president considered closing the crater off to tourists, since it posed as an obvious risk to its surrounding people and wildlife. But in 2013, he declared that the area where the crater is to be a natural reserve. Doesn't make sense? Same. I mean, the guy drove donuts around the crater to squash rumors that he wasn't dead. Clearly, his priorities are very straight. With the crater proving every estimation wrong so far, no one really knows how long it'll keep burning. Despite its lack of security, people still trek into the desert to witness the sight in its all blazing glory. With the country's government hoping it'll gain enough tourists and campers, the crater has become one of the most fascinating mistakes humankind has ever made.
Imagine you're walking along an unexplored, dry, open field. You stumble and you fall. You rise to see a diamond jutting out of the ground. Eureka, you're rich. Now, not everyone has the same luck as you do. Others stumble upon trash, rocks, branches. Some, weirdly, stumble upon depressions in the ground. Hey, the ground can feel sad and lonely too. After all, everyone storms right over it. If you already don't have a top hint about my topic, it's the Nazca Lines of Peru. Here, the term Nazca refers to the city Nazca, which is the capital of the Nazca province. They literally had one job in the naming. The word's actual meaning has been lost in the translation over all these years. So, what's so special about these lines, you wonder? Well, they're special in the sense that they are huge in size. And by huge, we're talking kilometers and kilometers. To give you a good idea of how big these lines are, here's a perspective of the size. They make designs that are only visible and prominently understood when seen from an airplane or a satellite, spreading over 1 kilometer in area each and about 1300 kilometers in total length, which is half the distance from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. These lines are of feet. They're about 15 centimeters deep and 50 centimeters wide and were made by removing the top layer of the soil. Straight lines, curved lines, figurines, you name it, they made it. Created somewhere around the 500 BCE, these lines make up a large group of geoglyphs. A geoglyph is a large design produced on the ground formed by rocks or other elements of the landscape. There are designs present whose accuracy and precision can't even be matched today. These were first discovered back in 1553 and were described as astronomical trail markers. There are all sorts of figures: a spider, fish, monkey, plants, trees, and even humans. This gives us the feeling that they may have been religious deities that the people prayed to. With all this in the background, now you wonder, what's the weird part in this? To that question, I introduce aliens into the midst. The fact that these lines can only be seen from a height is notable given that there was no flying up till the 1900s. Therefore, there are theories stating the fact that aliens helped the people of Nazca to make these lines. That the Nazcans used alien technology and made these lines by flying in their spaceships. The reasons behind these theories are particularly bizarre. Some say that these figurines acted like landing strips for the extraterrestrials, which even a Google search confirms. While others said that since they were big enough, they acted as an attraction for the alien gods from space. The Nazcas are also believed to have some of the best mummification processes there are. So, a number of well preserved bodies have been found in recent times. The strange thing in these bodies is that some of them are particularly weird in terms of human proportions. It can be an elongated head like that. Oh, wait, not like that. Or the three fingered mummy who would have had a hard time gripping things. What motives the aliens had for giving the people of Nazca their ships or for settling down on Earth is still something that the conspiracists are yet to conjure. There are also theories that suggest that these figures might have been markers for subterranean water flows, although that does not explain how they were made in the first place. One of the figures, a spider, had something peculiar about it. It was a perfect and precise representation of the Riciniolae, one of the world's rarest spiders. Now, the weird part is that this species is believed to exist and live only in the deepest and the most inaccessible regions of the Amazon rainforest, while Nazca receives just 4 rain a year. Yet, the figure fits the spider so perfectly that even a microscopic organ present on the leg is there. This leads us to believe that they might have had microscopes too, which is crazy in itself. This landmark has been named a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the overall matter still remains mysterious. Hopefully, in the upcoming times, we can gain more knowledge and figure out as to how these were made.
I want you all to picture a building, a behemoth concrete structure, a fortress so strong and stable that even 60 tons of dynamite could not bring it down. A structure so threatening that bombers and escort jets stayed at least 10 kilometers away from it. A safe haven standing upright in the middle of bombing raids. A symbol of a people's solidarity and a reminder of a dictator's brutality. A tower that did not go down without a fight. The Zoo Tower. It was 1940. Now we know what follows that statement: war, destruction, suffering, chaos, death, right? Right. So there was war, destruction, suffering, chaos, death, and more since Britain and Germany were bombing each other. On one such fateful night, the Luftwaffe lost their way and ended up bombing London. In a massive retaliatory action, 89 RAF bombers laid large parts of Berlin low. Now, what does an angry little man with anxiety issues do in this situation? Raise the walls! And that's what Hitler did, quite literally. Hitler ordered the building of massive bomb shelters and anti aircraft structures to protect the symbol of his power, central Berlin. Zoo Tower, situated in the Berlin Zoo, became the first of many towers around the cities of Berlin, Vienna, and Hamburg. Contrary to the generic underground bunkers, these were built 50 to 70 meters above the ground and were armed with enough anti aircraft guns to fire more than 8,000 rounds per minute. To give a little perspective, an average Kalashnikov bullet capable of destroying parts of the human body is only 7 wide, this wide, whereas the shells that this building fired were 1,280 wide. Now that's a lot of firepower for a grey brick to flex about. But that's not even half as impressive as the structure itself. Now you can imagine how strong a building can be to have such a huge impression in World War II history. Calling it a tough structure to attack and demolish is an understatement. It had 2.5 meter thick steel reinforced concrete walls with no single load bearing structure. So, what that means is even though if you could punch a hole through one side of the building, the rest of it would stand upright. So, in 1945, when the Soviet forces marched into Berlin, Uncle Adolf had a tower ready to roast and toast the Soviet tanks as if they were bread on a Monday morning breakfast table. You got those buzzy, irritating aircrafts, the towers would shoot them down like flies. You want to bomb them? Good luck breaking through 1.5 meter thick roofs. Simply put, these structures were built to withstand everything. And withstand they did not. Fast forward to May 1945, Germany lost, Allies won, and the towers were demolished. But the story does not end there. You see, these structures had something really marvelous about them. These towers carry with them a symbolic legacy that still lives in the scars that their walls have. Slave labor was used to build these towers, with the Zoo Tower itself taking just 6 months and 1,600 tons worth of material a day for construction. To put that into perspective, a single Tata truck weighs 2 tons. So imagine 800 tons worth of construction material to be used a day. The tower hosted hospitals and bunkers for 15,000 citizens. A large number of Berliners were born in these structures during the war. The irony of it all. Life taking its first breath in a haven built for annihilation. A perfect slaughter machine incubating hope of continued existence. One can still observe the engravings of the wood panes used in its construction on its outer walls. Such a mighty warrior of the war that saw little action in the European theatre finally came crumbling down in 1947. While the surviving towers were converted into a nightclub, museum, power facility, and an aquarium, one simply cannot deny how a prodigy of fascist might has come to serve the people of a free world. Well, isn't that ironical?
Think about a monolithic structure that has no explanation yet spawns theories ranging from being ruins of an ancient temple to being a landing pad for aliens. Anything coming to your mind? What I'm talking about is the Stonehenge. It is located in Wiltshire in England, and the place was formerly known as Salisbury Plains. It consists of a ring of stones that have a shape similar to that of the mathematical pi. Or to be vague, you can also say that they are a pile of stones on a barren land in the middle of nowhere. This huge piece of architecture is made up of two kinds of stones. The bigger ones are almost 9 meters high and can weigh up to 40 tons. And to give you a perspective, we are intimidated by just one Shaquille O'Neal. The smaller ones, known as blue stones for obvious reasons, weigh up to 4 tons and come from various archaeological sites, some as far as 140 miles. Its origins can be traced back to the mid 3rd millennium BC, sometime close to when the queen was born, if I'm not wrong. It was initially a simple, huge block of rock and evolved over a course of 10,000 years. The Neolithic people took around 1500 years to erect the monument as we see it today. It was a burial ground before, but today it stands as a monument that people come to see. Well, if humans can grow from a chaiwala to a prime minister, then this is the least we can expect from a piles of rock, I guess. According to another theory, it is also said that the Stonehenge's builders used tree logs to roll the stones up and down the hills and used rafts to move them across rivers. Or alternatively, it was just the glaciers that helped them with the heavy lifting. But what I feel is they did this. That is to summarize, improvise, adapt, and overcome. Maybe this guy helped him, who knows? Surprisingly, it has other significances apart from just being a Windows XP wallpaper. To be exact, even archaeologists have just been able to speculate as to what its history is, how did it come to be there, and more importantly, why does it exist? The same question we ask about Tech Tattva. An astronomer tried to prove that it has an astrological significance. Well, because if nothing works, just tell that the placement of Saturn determines the position of the rocks. At least the Indians will believe. He tried to explain that it has relations to the astrological calendar, with various points corresponding to phenomena like eclipses, etc. Even though his theories did receive attention, the idea was eliminated, thinking that maybe people during those times didn't know so much and possibly couldn't predict so much. In 1620, the first Duke of Buckingham dug a large hole in the ground at the center of the Stonehenge, hoping to find some buried treasure. And it is not entirely crazy to believe that there is a treasure hidden at the center of anything built in circular form. But unfortunately, he didn't. So they just came to India, took the Kohinoor away from us to compensate for it. More recently, signs of illness and injury in the human remains unearthed at the Stonehenge led a group of British archaeologists to believe that this place was used for healing. Perhaps because the blue stones were thought to have curative powers. But for me personally, the biggest mystery is how did they bring so many huge rocks to this place? I mean, they're rocks. Don't you get it? They don't have a proper foundation. So if they fall, that's the worst and the most dangerous game of dominoes you will ever witness. And I believe it wasn't a burial before, but it is just because of the stones falling on people that they died. And there might have been so many deaths that they might have hidden some number of deaths, just like China hid some of their pandemic deaths. Relate, maybe?
All right, on that note of the pandemic, let's take a journey back in time. The year was 1918. The First World War was about to come to an end. The USS Cyclops was leaving the port of Rio de Janeiro and was planning to go all the way to Baltimore. Unfortunately, this ship just randomly disappeared off the coast of the Atlantic. Now, let's fast forward to the year 1945. A fleet of fly aircrafts known as Flight 19 was leaving off a base in Florida. Now, these flights also disappeared off the coast of the Atlantic. And what's even more strange about this is a rescue flight was sent in search of these flights, and this rescue flight just burst in midair, like boom. So I think you have an idea what I'm going to talk about here. And of course, it is the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle is a loosely demarcated area in the northwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean. Take a look at this infographic. There are the, over the past 2 centuries, there are so many missing ships, planes, and even humans that mishaps that have occurred in the Bermuda Triangle. So, why is this happening? Well, we as humans have come up with so many conspiracy theories. The number is countless. So, I just want you to take a second to think of some theory as to why all these ships and planes are disappearing. Just a second. I'll be right back. All right. My theory is aliens. Okay. So, on a serious note, so it is still very strange as to why so many things go missing at the Bermuda Triangle. Is it? Well, not so much. Now, remember the two stories I told you earlier about the USS Cyclops and Flight 19? Well, those, what I just told you, were just basically headlines. Basically, how the media tries to fool us today. And by the way, if you haven't been following our Insta page, please do. We have a brilliant series called Masquerading Media. And after the shameless self promo, I shall continue. Okay. Now, let's go take a deep dive into those stories. So, the captain of the USS Cyclops was an alcoholic. I know it's a cliche, but it was true. So, unless your companion is Tintin, this is not the ideal quality of a ship captain. So, they set sail in October, and around they set sail in October, and around March, the captain just decides, you know what? Let's get off the ship and have a small party in Barbados. Okay, now let's just put all this into perspective. A party, an alcoholic captain, and 6 months at sea, and suddenly just gets off and has a party in Barbados. Keep in mind, this was during the First World War, and strict protocol was do not get off your plane until your destination was met, or ship. So now, one thing I forgot to mention was the Bermuda Triangle was renowned for having very unpredictable weather. This included hailstorms, typhoons, thunderstorms, and many more. So a week after this party, the entire ship just disappeared. And when the search party came, small debris was found over there. Now, let's go take to the second case. That's about Flight 19. The lead pilot of Flight 19, Captain Taylor, was also, guess what, an alcoholic. Again, not a great quality for a flight pilot. Okay, and the other pilots were all inexperienced or had very little experience in flying. So, uh, so as the pilot was flying, he realized that his magnetic compass was showing in opposite direction. Well, and one thing I forgot to mention was the planes themselves were pretty faulty. The rest of the crew did not seem to observe any problem. But then, just a few seconds later, after this report, the planes just disappeared. Now you might be asking, well, what about the rescue plane that had come in search for these planes? This plane was given the nickname of a flying gas tank because it had a reputation of just blowing up randomly. If you just Google top 10 things of what an airplane is not supposed to do, not blowing up is one of them. So Now, if you just take each and every case that happened in the Bermuda Triangle and just take a deep look at them, you can see some plausible explanation on the other as to why these ships slash planes disappeared. There is another famous area in Nevada called the Nevada Triangle. A lot of mishaps have happened here too, but we don't talk about it as much. So, why is the Bermuda Triangle so famous? Maybe because there's traveling international borders? I mean, who knows? But scientists have always said the main mystery in the Bermuda Triangle is that why is there a mystery to begin with? The facts are always there. I don't completely agree with the statement because there is no, I mean, we can't, I mean, although they have explained a lot of the stuff, there is no definite proof as to why a lot of stuff just disappears here. Now, with that, we come to the end of the talk. I thank you all for joining us, and I just want to leave a short note that mysteries are a big part in what makes us human. We are able to find a lot of mysteries in the universe and solve them, and that's how we evolved as human beings. There's a reason why we hate it when someone breaks the suspense in Endgame and tells us the ending of our favorite book or TV show or whatever it is. It's because we like to solve them ourselves. We like to find out in our own way. So I think that's what evolves us as a species. That's what brings us forward. And at Blank, we have a very specific motto, and that is stay curious. And I advise you all do the same. Thank you all so much.